I'm John Rodgers from Cuyahoga Falls, and today I represent the Portage Trail group of the Sierra Club. And we're going to talk about our national park system today, and we're going to talk about it in two parts. The Antiquities Act, sometimes called the National Monument Act, was passed in 1906 during Theodore Roosevelt's days in the White House. His administration laid much of the groundwork for the National Park Service Act, which was passed in 1916 during the administration of Woodrow Wilson. The first director of the National Park Service was Stephen Mather, a Sierra Club member. Much of the push for the National Park Act came from John Muir and the Sierra Club. And I hope you recognize Theodore Roosevelt on the left, and that's John Muir on the right. Now, the President of the United States can use the Antiquities Act to set aside areas and protect them, but a national park requires an act of Congress. And here is the symbol of the National Park Service. 50 million people visit the 49 national parks each year, but there are many other properties in the system, and we'll also want to sample them. Now, I cannot stick with that 49 national parks. They keep changing the figure on me. I understand now it's a few more than that, but the last time I counted 49, and I've been in about 34 of them. At least 16 classifications are in existence, and we'll run down the list. Number one, national parks. Those are the spots on the map are where all of the national parks are. And then I have a little thing to show you how many are in Alaska and Hawaii, and there was one in the Virgin Islands. But my total was 49. The national park that we're going to use for the number one classification of National Park Service lands is Yellowstone. It was the first national park all the way back in 1872, and there wasn't even a national park system until 1916. And what John Muir had to say about that, incidentally, that arch was the one that Theodore Roosevelt went through when he first visited Yellowstone. And these are some of the geysers. I'm going to show you a few pictures of this one because this is a great one. These are the Sheep-Eater Cliffs. John Muir said this about the Yellowstone National Park. It's a big, wholesome wilderness on the broad summit of the Rocky Mountains, favored with abundance of rain and snow. Besides the treasures common to most mountain regions that are wild and blessed with a kind climate, the park is full of exciting wonders. The wildest geysers in the world are dancing and singing in it. And these are the Mammoth Crystal Springs on the northwest side of it. Really gorgeous stuff. Each of the little black spots that you see down in there are buffalo. And this plant that you see in the foreground is sagebrush, a very scrubby type of sagebrush. Bubbling hot springs, you dare not put your hand in that one. It'll scald it. And Old Faithful. Old Faithful isn't all that faithful. It can go anywhere from about 45 minutes between eruptions on up to about 90 some odd minutes. Its normal is about 64, somewhere like that. No, this bull elk wouldn't turn around for me, so you're looking at his hindsight, but look at that rack on him. And after the fires, this was what some of the devastation looked like. This particular picture shows not only the fire, but a windstorm following the fire that knocked many of the weakened trees over. But Yellowstone is coming back, and Yellowstone will be even more beautiful than it was before. It'll take 15, 20 years, but you'll have a lot of open meadows and so forth where you had nothing but dense pine. One of the animals, the coyote. And up in the northern part, those mountains in the background are probably over in Montana. You see this park has a little piece of Montana, a little piece of Idaho, and most of it is in Wyoming. This is one of the pronghorns, and he's very close to a campground that you see in the back. And don't get too close to these guys. This is a bull moose. And they are a lot faster than they look. This is the Hayden Valley, and that is the Yellowstone River flowing through the Hayden Valley. This is all the ancient caldera of a volcano. And that river then flows and drops as the upper falls of the Yellowstone, comes through some rapids, and then drops in the picture you may have seen before, the lower falls of the Yellowstone. This is one of the most photographed spots in North America, I think. It's a beauty. And then the river flows. I've turned completely around. The river flows through what they call the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, goes across Montana, and empties into the Missouri all the way in North Dakota. But we've gone on now to the second classification of National Park Service land, and that's a national monument. And you're looking at the first of them. This is Devil's Tower in Wyoming. This is in northeastern Wyoming, sometimes considered part of the Black Hills vacation land. If you saw the movie Encounters of the Third Kind, I think it was called, this is the geological formation that you saw. And there are climbers going up Devil's Tower. That's for them, not for me. Looking out from the base, you see some of the beautiful country of eastern Wyoming. A lot of green in it. Parts of Wyoming are very dry. There's a little trail about a mile, mile and a quarter around it that you can hike. Not too bad. But stay out of those rock piles. They have rattlesnakes in them. And some of the friendliest prairie dogs that you will see in the West let you get very close to photograph them. Prairie dog towns. Moving once again, we're at classification number 3, which is National Lakeshore. And these are the pictured rocks in Lake Superior on the northern peninsula of Michigan. You view these from a launch that you have to go on. Costs you a little bit of money, but not too bad. And you go about 17 miles down the side of the southern edge of Lake Superior to see all kinds of formations along the way. See, this one's not very far from home. And then we've jumped once again. We still have water as the background, but the fourth classification is National Seashore. And I've picked Cape Cod in Massachusetts for this particular classification. That lighthouse back behind the dunes is the Norset Light in the southern part of Cape Cod. If you like high bluffs, high dunes and so forth, and beautiful ocean, nice sand, this is a great place. In the summertime it gets kind of crowded though. And now we're going to switch to classification number 5, which is a national parkway. The second section of this, I'm going to show you the Blue Ridge Parkway. So for this particular part, I chose the Natchez Parkway. This is the old Natchez trail that ran from Natchez on the Mississippi, down in Mississippi, all the way up to Nashville. If you had run your goods down on a barge to New Orleans or to Natchez, then you had no power at that time to get your barge back up, and you would come through on this trail. Now, you should be with a party of people because highwaymen knew that you probably had money. And so it was good to watch out for that. You'll see some traces of the early Americans down through there. This is the Far Mounds just off the Natchez Trace. Now see, we're playing tag with this trace. I am actually, each move I'm doing is out on a 2-lane, non-commercial highway. Cypress swamps. Springtime. Boy, springtime down that area is really delightful. Not summer, but springtime. They think that animals first made part of this trail, and then American Indians probably followed the animal trail, and then it just went on and on. Now, number 6 classification is National Preserve. I could not find any national preserves that were not something else. So since I like Glacier Bay, which is a national park, it's also a preserve. I chose that one. So this is Glacier Bay in southeastern Alaska. That's a glacier coming down through there. And incidentally, all of this stuff is part of yours and mine, because this is all National Park Service land, and that belongs to the American people. Not to Congress, not to the President, not to the Secretary of the Interior, not even to the head of the National Park Service, but it's owned by you and I. I wish those people would remember that. You're looking at the end or the toe of a glacier, and what you're seeing is about 200, 220 feet of ice, but it goes down 4 to 5 times that much. So you have a lot of ice there. I don't know what you're going to do with your share of that ice, but I'm not going to use mine. Alaska is a wonderful place, and in that area you have what is called a temperate zone rainforest. Now we've moved back into the lower 48, and we're out in Wisconsin at St. Croix, and this is a national scenic river, the St. Croix. Now, had I known that I was going to later use some of these pictures, I would certainly not have had that bridge in a national scenic river picture. And you can see a boat to the right, but it is a very nice area. Beautiful rock formations, forested. It's really quite good. And we're a little closer to home now for a national river. This is classification number 8, and we're at the New River in West Virginia. Now, this is in West Virginia and in North Carolina. I'm not sure whether it goes through a little part of Virginia or not. The road that you see along the side, or the right-of-way, is for a train. And the New River is the 2nd oldest river in the world, running in its original bed. The oldest is the Nile. And one day a year, if you're really into it, you are allowed to parachute or bungee jump off of that bridge. Mind the rock now when you hit bottom, but you are allowed to do that without any legal implications. Classification number 9, National Recreation Area. And I have chosen our own Cuyahoga Valley National Recreation Area to illustrate this one right here in Ohio, over in Summit and Cuyahoga counties. And I'll have quite a few pictures of this. This is Brandywine Falls. We will begin and end with Brandywine Falls. This waterfall would do justice to many of the western canyons, but there's a lot of other things in here as well. The ledges, Kendall ledges. In the wintertime, you can see the icicles coming off of it. Trails all over the place. Now, several things that are governed by the metro parks of Cleveland and the metro parks of Summit County are also included in the boundaries. But one of the main things is the Cuyahoga River and then the Ohio and Erie Canal. But did you know right here in Ohio we have a native orchid? This is the lady slipper. Right up in, not far from the town of Peninsula. And up on that bank is the towpath. This is the Cuyahoga River again. And then this is Blue Hen Falls, off another little tributary of the Cuyahoga River. There's all kinds of things to see up through there. There are even 2 ski resorts within it, and Blossom Music Center is within it. And this is, some people call them a golden flag. It's actually a native iris. And you'll see a few deer around. You will see a lot of deer around. Now you can see the towpath, the canal, and the river from the bridge on Route 82. That's called the Pinery Narrows area, although the pines are virtually gone. And this is one of the locks of the Ohio and Erie Canal. And all of this is not many miles away from where we're doing this. These are balls of sycamore hanging against the blue sky in midwinter. And I said we would begin and end with Brandywine Falls, and we're back to Brandywine at this point. And now we're going out west again to number 10 classification, a national memorial. This is Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills of South Dakota. This was carved by Borglum, Gutzon Borglum. And I'll go through the presidents: Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Now, don't expect to do this with just a little camera. You have to have some power to pull these in this fine. Note all the marks and so forth. Every year, they lower a ranger down in a boatswain's chair to examine the faces. About in September they do this so that they can fill any cracks that might get water in them and thus burst during the wintertime. Notice the guy in the boatswain's chair sitting on Abraham Lincoln's nose. Now, Abraham was a man of humor, and if he saw that after he got over the shock of being depicted on Mount Rushmore, he'd probably laugh at that. He'd like that. We've gone on now, and we're at the first of the National Historic Parks. And this was classification number 11. This was set aside by Theodore Roosevelt. It's in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, the northwest corner of New Mexico. But you have to go over about 30 dirt and gravel miles to get to it after you leave the highway. The ruin that you're looking at now, there are about 17, maybe even more than that, ruins back in here, but the one you're looking at is Pueblo Bonita, beautiful village. These were the dwelling places of the Anasazi, or ancient ones, and Chaco Canyon was all vacated by about 1100 AD, whereas the Mesa Verde up in Colorado was still in existence as a dwelling place to about 1300 AD. Pueblo Bonita is huge. Very fine work. And my wife is looking at one of the keevers, ceremonial rooms, and they would have been covered over with timber and then brush to shelter it. We've gone on now to National Historic Site, classification number 12. And this is Old Fort Bowie in Arizona. It's all the way back there. Would you believe that's 3.5 miles it's going to take us to get back in there? And we got back in there to Fort Bowie, and the ranger says, "You people must not mind the hot weather. It's 105 degrees out here today." And then we simply melted at that point. On the way back in, I've already spoken in several presentations about the Overland stage, but there was also a Butterfield stage in the southern part of the West, and this was one of the stopping points of the Butterfield stage. And they think that's the way it looked when it ran. Then further on the trail is Apache Springs. Now you won't see much water coming out of this, but this was a water source for the Apache people for many, many years until the American Army took it over and Fort Bowie was put in to guard Apache Springs, to guard it from the Apaches, I suppose. And this is about what you will see of the fort today. And then on the way out, it's the same route, but the last battle with the Apaches was fought right here, and that says unknown, killed by Apaches. We've come over now into Pea Ridge, Arkansas. This is in the northwest part of Arkansas, and it's a national military park. It's classification number 13, and that is in the Visitors Center. And out on the field, it looks like this. Now, in that Visitors Center, I found these words on a plaque. And let them speak for the battlefields in the national park system. It's called Return to Pea Ridge. Spirits remembered are not spirits dead. Now in this peaceful place I pause to name each man who fell unknown, each man who bled his way to glory. Theirs was not the blame, but driven by some inner source of pride, each must have known while dying in this lee, his sacrifice would somehow fit the wide and widening pattern of destiny. How cold that other March time must have been, how bleak those wooded fields in the attack. I stand now where 1,000 nameless men laid down their lives in war, and looking back, I know I must remember. I must give a name to everyone, that he may live. And the name under that is Edsel Ford, and it says the poet has grown to manhood on the battlefield. And they did not know at the Visitors Center whether that was the Edsel Ford of the automotive family or not. You're looking at Elkhorn Tavern today, and here's what it looked like when the battle was going on. It's still standing. It survived. This was a two-day battle of tremendous significance. The first day was won by the Confederacy. They could not be reinforced, and the Union did get reinforcements in and swept the Confederates off the field the next day and won the battle. And after that, virtually everything happened east of the Mississippi, and the siege of Vicksburg started very soon after that. Going to another battlefield, going into my old home state, this is Cowpens, South Carolina, and this is simply called classification number 14, National Battlefield. Cowpens, this was one of the 3 battles, Revolutionary War, I've jumped wars on you, the Revolutionary War, and this is the one that sent Tarleton running in about 50 minutes, and was a key in turning Cornwallis towards Virginia and the final surrender of the Revolutionary War. The battle that you just saw depicted on the map took place right in this road. A few of the skirmishes took place on either side of it, and this is Morgan. He was the colonist general. And a few little things out like this. One skirmish took place. Now these had to be very brief and intense because the whole battle only lasted about 50 minutes. And most of it took place on that road that I pointed out. And the National Park Service, when they go into an area like this, They try and hold on to buildings especially that they can, if they're not absolutely beyond repair. They will hold on to them so that you and I might see how people lived at that time. Now here is a national battlefield site, classification number 15, Bryce's Crossroads, Mississippi. And this is the only one of what I'm giving you today that I have not visited. But it is only about 12 miles off of the Natchez Trace, which we've already looked at. So all I'm going to do is show you that picture saying Old Trace and the far mounds again, so you'll get the idea. And the next time I go through Mississippi, I promise to take pictures at Bryce's Crossroads. This was a battle that was won by the Confederacy. It was a one-day battle. And they don't talk too much about this in the Union forces because there was an instance probably of cowardice on the part of one of the Union generals. And number 16 classification, National Battlefield Park, and we've come up just outside of Washington, D.C., Manassas or Bull Run, Virginia. And this is the first, there were two battles fought here. The first one is where the men and women came out in their carriages to see the event of the day. It was going to be a nice outing from Washington, D.C. And they ended up just streaming back into Washington because the Confederates swept the field. And that building was there then and is still standing. You can still see it today. This is an area out here where commercial people wanted to put in a shopping center and an amusement park and all kinds of things that would desecrate the sanctity of this Civil War battlefield. Incidentally, I am from the South, and when I go down to my hometown of Charleston, South Carolina, and I use a term like I did, Civil War, I have people that correct me to war between the states. That's Stonewall Jackson, and this is the battle where he first got that name. And that is the little stream that gives it the name of Bull Run if you don't use the word Manassas. Now, everything in the national park system belongs to the citizens of the United States. I usually like in something like this to say that about 5 times. I won't today. They do not belong to Congress or the President or the Secretary of the Interior or the Director of the Park Service. They belong to you and me, and we pass them on to the next generations. Park concessionaires are there to serve the public, and I really wish they would understand that. The National Park Service is there to see that our property is all it contains and means is protected. They have a delicate task of protecting and yet allowing visitation to these magnificent lands. And I just reinforce the person living in this White House and the people in that Capitol building do not own the national parks. Now I want to show you 6 more properties in the national park system. These are the kinds that bring back all sorts of memories and lift you out of yourself. And the first one reminds us of a rough and dividing time and a tribute that has as its purpose healing and honoring. And that is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. Those are the 3 figures there. And then down from them, you've already seen a little bit of the wall that has the names on it. And here's a close-up of some of the names. All sorts of things are left here at the wall of the Vietnam Memorial in Washington. And then not far away is a much older memorial, the Lincoln Memorial. It was dedicated all the way back in 1922. And this statue is the very famous one done by Daniel Chester French of Abraham Lincoln. Maybe you've already seen my show on Abraham Lincoln, and I've seen these pictures very similar to these. And the Jefferson Memorial. Now remember, we're still talking National Park Service land, land that you and I own. Yes, I have been there during cherry blossom time. And that's the magnificent statue of Jefferson there. Now we're going to move over to the Washington Monument, and I'm showing it to you from Arlington Cemetery. And that's the bridge going across to the Lincoln Memorial, but we're looking at that obelisk in the right-hand side of the picture, the Washington Monument. And yes, you can go to the top of it. It's a little more crowded than it used to be when I went to the top of it. And there it is at sunset. Now we're going to move out of D.C. for a while, and we're going out to Missouri. St. Louis, Missouri, right on the banks of the Mississippi. I should say St. Louis, Missouri. Jefferson National Expansion Memorial, the arch in St. Louis, 630 feet high. An engineering marvel, and you can go up in the top of it, and that's where I'm taking this picture from. And note the shadow of the arch itself there in the right-hand corner. And this is the statue of Jefferson there, and you pass by it, you walk right across it as you go into the Museum of the Westward Movement. Moving over to the east again, New York Harbor, New York City Harbor, the Statue of Liberty, given to the people of the United States by France. And in it, I really like to call it Liberty Enlightening the World, but the lady who wrote this sonnet called it the New Colossus, so I guess I should stay with that. Her name was Emma Lazarus, and the New Colossus is because she is comparing it with one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, the Colossus of Rhodes, a giant statue at the harbor of Rhodes in the Mediterranean. And this is what she says: "Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor the twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp," cries she with silent lips. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuge of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." And now we have room for a 7-slide preview of the second part of Nature, History, and Memorials, our national park system. And you will see these in that. Arches National Park, Utah. Glacier National Park, Montana. Mesa Verde National Park, Colorado. Sticking in Colorado, Rocky Mountain National Park. Arizona, Grand Canyon. California, Yosemite. And Utah, Bryce Canyon. And as I said, I represent today the Portage Trail group of the Sierra Club. I'm John Rodgers from Cuyahoga Falls, and we're going to continue on with the National Park Service, and I'm still representing the Portage Trail group of the Sierra Club. And we're going to go into the second part of Nature, History, and Memorials, our national park system. Now, this second part will consist of brief looks at 14 national parks, 18 national monuments, and 1 parkway. The map shows that most scenes will be from the American West. The white markers are national parks, while the red are national monuments and the Blue Ridge Parkway. You might spend a moment to look at the varying terrain as seen on this 3D map. Now, I'll be doing a bit of quoting, and many quotes will be from the writing of John Muir, a founder and first president of the Sierra Club. We won't be seeing Yellowstone, it was in the first part, but let's start just south of it, and that is the Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. That's Jackson Lake, and there are the mighty Tetons, and this is the Snake River winding around in the foreground. We're in Jackson Hole, and Jackson Hole was a rendezvous point of the mountain men who would come down in about every 6 months and trade their furs and get money and raise cane and then head back up into the mountains again for another time. John Muir, quote, "Oh, these vast, calm, measureless mountain days, inciting at once to work and rest, days in whose light everything seems equally divine, opening 1,000 windows to show us God. Nevermore, however weary, should one faint by the way, who gains the blessing of one mountain day. Whatever his fate, long life, short life, stormy or calm, he is rich forever." That's Mount Moran there, and we're still talking about Jackson Lake in the foreground. And when you go over to the mountain side of this park, you see raging streams like this one. But calm, early morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, I took this picture, and those are clouds in front of Mount Moran. Skipping a little bit now to Utah, still out in the west, Bryce Canyon National Park, southern Utah. Erosion on a grand scale. If you look very closely, you can see a trail going down through there. All kinds of beautiful pictures there at Bryce. John Muir again. "In God's wildness lies the hope of the world, the great, fresh, unblighted, unredeemed wilderness. The galling harness of civilization drops off, and the wounds heal ere we are aware." Now, this is from down in the canyon itself, in the Queen's Garden part of it. Spire after spire after spire. You actually look to the east, looking down on the canyon, which is Bryce Canyon, from a ridge up on the western part of the national park. And then out to Oregon into Crater Lake. That's Phantom Ship that you see right in the middle, the rocky outcropping there. And the lake is about 2,000 feet below where I'm taking the picture. This is an extinct, at least they think it's an extinct, volcano of the Cascade Range, the same range of which St. Helens is a part, and Mount Hood and Mount Rainier and Shasta and so forth. And the water in it, the deepest point is just about, I think, 8 feet short of being 2,000 feet also. That's Phantom Ship again from a completely different angle. The drive around here, and of course it can't stay on the rim all the time, the drive is about 30 some odd miles long, so you can get an idea of the size of this thing. From where I'm looking, you look across about 6 miles of water. This is Wizard Island, and it has a little depression in the top of it, and it really is a volcano in its own right. Hopefully never erupts. But from where I'm standing now, looking all the way across there, is about a little over 6 miles. Just a real beautiful place in Oregon. Incidentally, this is beautiful weather for it. Many people go up there and never actually see the lake. Shenandoah National Park, Virginia. This is back in the east now, and that's a cloud hanging over the valley. Much of the charm of Shenandoah, incidentally, is the views, the real vistas and panoramic views that you see of the Shenandoah Valley. But it also has some beautiful vegetation, and this is mountain laurel. That's old Mount Rag in the autumn time. John Muir again. Come to the woods, for here is rest. There's no repose like that of the green, deep woods. Here grow the wallflower and the violet. The squirrel will come and sit upon your knee. The logcock will wake you in the morning. Sleep in forgetfulness of all ill. The deer let you get pretty close there. Looking to the west, and over in the next valley you can see a cloud is just practically covering the whole valley. And then autumn comes to the park. All along the Appalachian, the autumn is very, very good. Mesa Verde National Park, southwestern Colorado, out in what we call the Four Corners country. This was one of the homes of the Anasazi. In the first part, we looked at Chaco Canyon, which was vacated by about 1100 AD. This lasted until about 1300 AD. Notice how it's tucked under the mesa. Mesa Verde gets its name from the green vegetation and the flat tabletops of the more or less like a plateau. This is another one. This one is kind of incorrectly named. It's called Spruce Lodge, and as far as I know, there are no spruce in the Mesa Verde. It's all pines. And that's said to be the tallest tower in the Mesa Verde. This is one of the ones that you have to look at from an overlook, and unless you're good rappelling down a cliff and getting back out, you cannot really get to this one. Balcony house. This is one of the ones where you, when you want to get out of balcony house, you have to get down on your hands and knees and crawl out through a tunnel. But back to the Cliff Palace. Cliff Palace is the best known and the largest in the Mesa Verde. And a sunset. And we've moved all the way out into Olympic National Park in western part of Washington State, about 60 or 70 miles west of Seattle. And John Muir says here, for the mountains are fountains of men as well as of rivers, of glaciers, of fertile soil. The great poets, philosophers, prophets, able men whose thoughts and deeds have moved the world have come down from the mountains, mountain dwellers who have grown strong there with forest trees in nature's workshop. And those are the Olympic Mountains in the background. And there they are in the field, and I keep thinking that Julie Andrews is going to swing around singing Sound of Music. The hills are alive with the sound of music. A real gorgeous place. And over on the western side, has a tropical rainforest, a temperate zone rainforest. Over in this area, they get about 160 inches of rain a year. Over the other side that we've been looking at, they get about 40 to 45, somewhere like that. And Olympic National Park even has a strip right on the Pacific Ocean. So you get a lot of different variety in this park, this one park, and one of the finest beds of avalanche lilies that I've ever seen, just growing down the hillside. Moving back into Colorado again, the second national park in Colorado, Rocky Mountain National Park. This was the first Western national park I'd been to, and you're looking at Bear Lake. Bear Lake is at about 9,000 feet, I suppose, and this stream is running off of Bear Lake. Waterfalls and all those things. Now, I walked about a couple of hundred feet in front of our tent in order to take this picture. And Rocky Mountain National Park is the one that has Trail Ridge Road, and we're going up on Trail Ridge Road now. It will go up to 12,183 feet. That's over 2 miles above sea level, and you're up in tundra. You're well above timberline. You're up in countryside like this little guy. He's a pika, which is a little member of the hare family, lives at timberline. Or actually above timberline. And I am standing on a continental divide looking to the Atlantic drainage at Padre Lake. All the rain falling behind me would go to the Pacific. In front of me goes to the Atlantic through the Gulf of Mexico. Moving now to Florida, we have the Everglades National Park. This is Florida Bay and some of the islands there, mangrove islands form and the like. And then you can get into a couple of places where you will see a lot of wildlife. Not a great picture, that's a rosette spoonbill in there, the reddish one or the pinkish one. This is a great blue heron, which you can see closer to home than here, but maybe not from that easy distance. You won't see any of those in Ohio, and that is an alligator. And this is a bird called the anhinga. This is a bird that sort of puts its wings out to dry because it fishes and it does not have enough oil in its skin, and it goes under the surface in its fishing, eats its meal underwater, and then comes out and has to dry its wings before it can really fly. It can hop. And palmettos and all sorts of palms you will find down in the Florida Everglades. Before we move then to the Arches National Park in Utah. That is landscape arch from side to side. It's 304 feet. And it's only about 5 to 6 feet thick in one place. In the between the last 2 times I was there, it dropped off a section about 50 to 60 feet from the bottom of it. So it's coming along. It'll be dropping completely sometime, in my lifetime probably. Then you see all sorts of things like this, elephants coming towards you and so forth. Now this quote is from Ghostways by Tony Hillerman. He writes mystery stories out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he puts these words into the mouth of a wise old Navajo named Frank Sam Nakey. Memorize places. Settle your eyes on a place and learn it. Touch it with your mind. Inhale the air that moves across it. Listen to the sounds it makes. See it under the snow and when first grass is growing, and as the rain falls on it. Feel it and smell it. Walk on it. Touch the stones and it will be with you forever. When you are far away, you can call it back. When you need it, it is there in your mind. This is delicate arch. This is sort of the symbol of this park. There's a Navajo word, I pronounce it Hazro, which roughly means walking in harmony with beauty all around. There's a lot of beauty in this park. That's my wife standing under there, and you get a little idea of the scale of this thing. Actually, landscape arch is a little more delicate than delicate arch. This is Skyline Arch, and this is right by the campground. And we're in a section now that's called Park Avenue. That's the part to the right there. And this is Double Arch. There's the streaking that you see on these rocks is called desert varnish. And then we move over to one of John Muir's favorites, Yosemite National Park, California. Now, before we get too far, I should have read you this when we were talking about Rocky Mountain National Park. It's one of the best of the John Muir quotes, but it is very appropriate for Yosemite. Climb the mountains and get their good tidings. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into trees. The winds will blow their own freshness into you, and the storms their energy, while cares will drip off like autumn leaves. Now that big cliff to the left, that's El Capitan. The waterfall is Bridal Veil. Bridal Veil is about 600 or 700 feet. El Capitan is about 3,000, maybe a little better than that. I've seen it listed as 3,500 sheer. And all the way in the back, this one is Half Dome. And this is at Glacier Point. And there's the waterfalls of the Merced River, which flows down in through the valley, and that is Half Dome. And John Muir again. This is one of the big trees here. This is not the largest one in the world. That is down south of this, but this is a large, big tree. It seems strange that visitors to Yosemite should be so little influenced by its novel grandeur, as if their eyes were bandaged and their ears stopped. Most of those I saw yesterday were looking down as if wholly unconscious of anything going on about them, while sublime rocks were trembling with tones of the mighty chanting congregation of waters gathered from all the mountains round about, making music that might draw angels out of heaven. And I am standing against one of those big trees, and I am 6 feet tall. These things are huge. And this is that same Merced River with Half Dome reflected in it. John Muir, one more time, in Yosemite. And he's talking about a shepherd that he was trying to get to look at some of this stuff. Thus I pressed Yosemite upon him like a missionary offering the gospel, but he would have none of it. I should be afraid to look over so high a wall, he said. It would make my head swim. There is nothing worth seeing anyway, only rocks, and I see plenty of them here. Tourists that spend money to see rocks and falls are fools, that's all. You can't humbug me. And then John Muir says, the shepherd says, I've been in this country too long for that. And then John Muir says, such souls, I suppose, are asleep, are smothered and befogged beneath mean pleasures and cares. And that's the grand one. That is Yosemite Falls. From the top up here, where the water starts, till down in the dark part of the bottom of the picture is the extent of Yosemite Falls, and that's about 2,500 feet, almost half a mile for one waterfall. It's considered the third, it was considered one of the, maybe the third largest waterfall in the world, longest, but it has been superseded by a few, but certainly in the 48 it is the tallest. And then the high country, Tuolumne Meadows. This is where some of those shepherds would have been herding their sheep in the summer months. Now this old Jeffrey pine, and that's Half Dome under it. This is on Sentinel Dome, And this old fella died about 12 years ago. They took a boring and decided that it was a little over 400 years old, but it is dead now. This picture was taken all the way back in 1962. We're still in mountains, but we've moved into Washington State, and this is Mount Rainier National Park. John Muir again. This is 14,410 feet. It's a volcano. It's in the Cascade Range. John Muir. If in the making of the West, nature had what we call parks in mind, places for rest, inspiration, and prayer, this Rainier region must surely be one of them. In the center of it, there's a lovely mountain capped with ice. From the ice cap, glaciers radiate in every direction, and young rivers from the glaciers, while its flanks, sweeping down in beautiful curves, are clad with forests and gardens and filled with birds and animals. And the flower that you see in the foreground is the flowering of bear grass, or squaw grass, or basket grass. It's called by all of those. Mount Rainier, Washington State. It has, as I understand it, about 44 separate glaciers on its flanks. It also has a hot spot. And remember, you can actually see this volcano, and I took pictures last summer of this very volcano from Mount St. Helens. It's only about 60 miles apart. Now we have made a drastic move because we have gone into New Mexico, southeastern New Mexico, and Chihuahuan-type desert, because we are at Carlsbad Caverns. And that is the King's Chamber within Carlsbad. And this was written, and I found it down at Carlsbad, written by William E. Carson. Nature goes on with her work, enlarging her caverns or destroying them, decorating and redecorating them as she has been doing for 1,000,000 years. And 1,000,000 years from now, there will be new wonders for whatever eyes there are to behold. Now, this is a commercial picture. You are not allowed, at least anymore, in the cave while the bats are flying, that is towards twilight. But you can sit up in a little amphitheater-like place, and you can watch about 750,000 bats emerge from the cave towards twilight all through the summertime. And then they fly out over the river valleys and get their food, and then come back just before dawn. Arizona, still in the arid country, Grand Canyon National Park. Now, I never know when to stop taking pictures of Grand Canyon. John Muir, and this is the Colorado River running through it. John Muir, the Grand Canyon is a vast wilderness of rocks and a sea of light, colored and glowing like oak and maple woods in autumn when the sun gold is richest. And colors, the living, rejoicing colors, chanting morning and evening in chorus to heaven, whose brush or pencil, however lovingly inspired, can give us these. And if you go down into the canyon on the mules, you will follow that trail that you see switching back all over the place. That is Bright Angel Trail. And if you want to go on the mules, you better get your reservation in about 2 years, I understand, ahead of time. This is Cedar Ridge, and this is as far out into the canyon as I've been. About 3.5 miles, about 1,200